Welcome to my presentation about DIF IPFS, a novel DIF method for enhancing the identification of IPFS files. DIF IPFS is my contribution to the DIF Hackathon 2024. To understand the motivation and utility of DIF IPFS, we must consider again how we nowadays interact with IPFS. The user uploads a file, and IPFS stores that file and generates a content identifier, short CID, for that file. This is it, nothing more. DIF IPFS changes that, and we realize that change through the creation of DIF IPFS service provider, which is an API that easily creates DIF IPFS identifiers and also easily resolves them. And let me now explain how the DIF IPFS service provider changes the interaction with IPFS. The user still uploads a file, but this time to the service provider, which transforms that file into a DIF document, and that DIF document still contains the file, but also other features that are DIF document related. This DIF document is then stored in IPFS, which generates a content identifier for it, and that content identifier can be used by the service provider to create the DIF IPFS identifier. The interaction with IPFS is already changed, but can be even further enhanced through the built-in services of DIF IPFS. These DIF IPFS services provide metadata for each file that was inputted to the service provider, and this metadata is then integrated into the DIF document, and through this metadata, third parties can make use of these DIF IPFS services and interact with the IPFS files. But why would one do this? This is one reason to use these DIF IPFS services is because they unlock the full potential of IPFS. And one exemplary DIF IPFS service that showcases that is the machine learning data provider, because that machine learning data provider adds tags to every file that was inputted into the DIF IPFS service provider, and with the help of these tags, the IPFS files can be found easily and processed easily by machine learning model trainers. Another advantage of these DIF IPFS services is that they can solve core limitations of IPFS. One big limitation of IPFS is that one cannot find the IPFS files based on their content. One only has to know the CID of IPFS file in order to find it. But an IPFS search engine that could be based on a DIF IPFS service can change that. Let me show you how. Because that DIF IPFS service of a IPFS search engine would add metadata about each of the inputted file to the service provider and makes that file then queryable, and through these metadata then other people can find files in IPFS through a dedicated IPFS search engine. So in summary, DIF IPFS is a new DIF method designed for enhancing identification of IPFS files. The DIF IPFS service provider makes the creation and resolution of DIF IPFS identifiers easy and fast. And it also includes built-in DIF IPFS services, which can unlock the full potential of IPFS and solve core limitations of IPFS. As future work, I plan to further explore the utility of DIF IPFS as a general DIF method. Also, I want to realize the DIF IPFS services I mentioned beforehand, namely the machine learning data provider and the IPFS search engine, which are in my demo only showcased but not fully implemented. I thank you for your attention.